Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Soft Faith. I hope everybody's season has been going well. And with that being said, if you have been following your Lenten goals or schedules, or whatever you want to call it, you might start to notice that there is a sort of shift in energy, I guess is a way to put it. And what I mean by a shift of energy is we're going to be talking about something called a spiritual warfare. And you might have heard the term, but you might not exactly know what it means. And that's what we're going to be going into today. Talking about what really is a spiritual warfare and why does it happen. And we'll also talk about what to do in those certain situations and whatnot. So, to start, a spiritual warfare is kind of like what's that one game called? A tug of war. And it's between the good and the bad. And what I mean by that is between God and the devil, or Satan, whatever. And you're kind of like in the middle of it. So basically, on Satan's side, or on the devil's side, you are he's kind of trying to get you to go back to your old ways and try to tell you that, oh, what you're doing right now is kind of boring and there's no point of doing all this and turning to God and whatnot. You should just come back. And on God's side, he's kind of sort of protecting you from that and fighting that negativity off, or just, trying to protect you from going back to your old ways. And, uh, you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like this back and forth situation of temptation and committing other sins that you probably shouldn't be doing. But in a nutshell, it's basically this internal struggle between the truth and other sins that you used to commit but you don't want to commit anymore. This, I guess, in a nutshell, truth versus temptation. And what I mean by truth is that this is kind of going on in your head, right? And it's kind of like this process of all these thoughts coming together between these good thoughts and these bad thoughts. And what I mean by truth and temptation is that you kind of go through these lies that are like, oh, like this, like if I do this, it's not going to be that big of a deal, or it's not like that serious. Spiritual warfare is basically learning to recognize those lies and replace them with the truth. And it can kind of also dip into little things like distraction, veering you away from uh being more spiritually focused. So it's kind of like a little bit of everything. What I'm trying to get to is that the devil will notice that you are on the right path. And this kind of dips into what I mean by why does spiritual warfare happen? The devil will notice that you are on the right path of being more aligned in your faith with Christ. And the devil isn't going to like that. So he'll try with any means possible to get you to fall short from that and throw you off course and whatnot. So that's kind of like the whole idea of that tug of war motion, where you're trying to stay on the path of Christ, but then something keeps on trying to drag you away from it. And it's more common when you are doing the right things. Like I said, when you are on the right track and you are growing stronger in your faith, the devil is going to fight harder. And the whole reason of me bringing this up during Lent is that during these times of fasting, or just being more focused on Christ, like the whole idea of Lent, that's when it's most active. That's when spiritual warfare is most common, because you are more focused on your faith, on your religion than normal, I guess. So during these couple of weeks, if you are in a sort of position where you think it's getting harder, or by the days go on, like temptation is growing stronger, that is totally normal. And it's because of you growing stronger in your faith, the devil will try to fight harder, will try to, by any means, try to knock you off your course. And another thing to note is that this happens to all Christians everywhere, not just beginners. But it's easier for the devil to attack beginners because they don't know, they're not aware of this situation of the spiritual warfare. They're not aware that this is going on. And when they get hit with his kind of motives, then they completely get knocked off their course and they don't try to get back up. But it happens to everybody. But with this having this awareness of the fact that a spiritual warfare, oh my goodness, the spiritual warfare will happen a couple times in your life is good to have, because then you would be ready to attack back, I guess. Not to get violent, but I guess the whole idea is to just be aware that where there's good, there's always bad. And because there's good and bad in this world, there will always be some sort of tension. And especially nowadays, whatever is going on in the world right now, it's very, I don't want to say it's peak, but there's a lot going on in the world now. And I think it's just really important to be aware of your surroundings and be aware of the people that are around you too. And that's so big. And we'll get into that a little bit in a bit of what I mean by that. And so, what I'm trying to say is that spiritual warfare happens because you are on the right track. And there's this phrase that, or I guess not phrase, but there's this idea that if Satan has a hold of you, if the devil has already attacked you, why would he waste his time to go after you again? And what I mean by that is he's not going to go after the people that have already fallen. He will continue to try to get as many souls, I guess is the right word in this context. He will try to get as many people as he can. And once he's already gotten you, he's not going to look back at you. You know what I'm saying? So the whole idea of him attacking people is he'll attack those that are on the right track because he doesn't want to see them keep doing what they're doing. He wants to knock people down and he wants to keep knocking people down, I guess. So the reason that there is the spiritual warfare is because the devil will keep trying to attack no matter what. As long as there is good in this world, he will continue to try to knock that down, is what I'm trying to say. So if you realize that you are in some sort of tense situation, which probably means you're in a spiritual warfare, there might be this sort of, you're gonna feel drained, if that makes sense, because there is so much energy that is, or there's, like I said, it's kind of like a tug of war game. Imagine you are, how about this? Say you are out with two friends, and one says, "Oh, let's go get donuts from this donut shop." And another friend says, "No, let's go to Crumble instead. Let's go get cookies. We already had donuts last week." So there will be this sort of bickering going back and forth, talking about, no, I think donuts is a better idea. No, I think cookies is a better idea. And they will continue to try to change your mind, talking about, I think you should, what do you say we pick? And then you're kind of in this like tense situation of, well, this one's telling me this, but this one's telling me that, and then you start getting headaches because they keep on yelling back and forth. So that's kind of like the whole situation that I'm trying to get at, is that you will kind of feel a little bit drained and kind of stressed out because of this back and forth motion. And that's totally normal. but you should learn that there are ways to handle this. And one of the ways, and I've kind of mentioned this a couple of times, but it doesn't hurt to mention again. When you realize you're in a situation where you feel tempted, and I think I kind of talked about this last week, but you're in a situation where you feel tempted to commit a sin that you don't normally. You have to stop before you act on anything and kind of reflect on the situation. What is making you do the action that you probably shouldn't be doing? When you reflect on it and you realize what's going on, you should probably kind of stop to pray and ask God to be like, hey, can you help me out here? Because I feel like I'm being tempted, but can you just help me out of this? And I think it's just a great way to just stop and pray because when in doubt, pray. And I've said this 20 million times and I will continue saying it another 20 million times. You stop and you pray because I think the only person that will help you out, well, not person, but the only one that can help you out of this situation is God. And like I said, prayer is the most important communication with Him, so you stop and pray. Now, say you're out of this temptation, you don't commit the sin that you've done. I think it's very important to take some time out of your day to reflect on that situation. Think like, what made me be tempted to do something? And I'll give you an example that I kind of am going through recently during this Lent. So, I, for a couple times a week, I try to not listen to secular music. I try to kind of focus on worship music because I'm trying to control what goes in and what goes out. We haven't had that lesson talk, but basically, a couple times a week or a couple days a week, I try to not listen to any secular music. But recently, I've been very tempted to kind of break that promise and listen to regular music. I am a music lover, but I've realized I've been obsessing over it. And as Christians, we have this thing where it's like nothing's banned from us. It's just the obsession of something is bad. That's when it gets to a point of sinning. So I realized I should probably not be listening to music as much as I should. And that's why I was like, if I do listen to music, it should be worship music. But I've realized I've been tempted many times to listen to my regular party playlists or whatever. And so I stopped and I thought to myself, what is it that's causing me to get bored of worship music and listen to my regular secular music? And I've noticed that apparently there's two types of people. There's the type of people that listen to music for the lyrics, and then there's a type of people to listen to music for like the beat, the melody, the flow, not really paying attention to lyrics as much. And I found out I'm the second person. But when I realized that, I was like, okay, maybe I should change my playlist around and kind of put in music that are like more upbeat because that was my issue with some of my worship music wasn't very upbeat and it was very like slow, somber, whatever, and very long too. That was another thing I noticed. I kind of have a shorter attention span, so then I get bored quickly. So I've basically, to get to the point, I've changed around my music so that I've put in worship music that is still upbeat and it isn't live, and I'm still enjoying it the same way I would enjoy my like regular upbeat hype secular music. So that's kind of one way to go about it, is that you change something in your routine that you help prevent that temptation to happen again. And another thing is have somebody, if you're comfortable enough, have somebody to hold you accountable. And what I mean by that is, take for instance, I've mentioned about like nothing really being banned, but it's the obsession of it. Take for instance, like going out, having a drink, whatever. Say you're somebody that said, oh, I really need to limit how much I drink, but you find yourself always, going over the limits and drinking too much and then whatnot. That would be a perfect moment to have somebody to hold you accountable, because when you are, under the influence or whatnot, you aren't in the right headspace to make decisions. And that's also note it, a perfect time for the devil to attack because you are not in the right headspace. You are not cognizant of your decisions and whatever's going on around you. So have somebody else that can help hold you accountable or like help guide you when you feel like not even under the influence. Take like a situation where you know you're going to be, I guess, under stress. Like I know some people don't fluctuate well or make the right decisions under stress. So it's good to have somebody with you that can help guide you in the right mindset. Because I think when you're in a spiritual warfare, sometimes you don't know what decisions to make and what actions to take. So having that guidance, that external guidance, is really good. So to sum things up, it's okay to have a spiritual warfare, especially nowadays and especially during Lent, because things get tense, and as you're trying to grow your faith with God, it happens. The devil will always try to attack where there's good. So, totally normal. If it happens, consult somebody, have somebody help you out with it. Pray, meditate, reflect, journal, all those sorts of things. But yeah, so I think I'm going to end it there for today. A little bit of a longer episode, but I think it's really important to be aware of what a spiritual warfare is and what to do when it happens. Because so many Christians just don't, well, not so many. Some Christians aren't aware of what a spiritual warfare really is and like aren't aware that it's happening. So when you do fall into that temptation and you knock yourself down, some of them just don't get back up, and then that's why you see ex Christians talking about it. So I think I'll end it there today. I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you next week. Bye!